Hello, we are about to start in 1 minute. Welcome to our webinar today, HR Forum. We're starting in about 1 minute. Okay. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's discussion about managing people during a crisis and people strategy. So my name is Char Miller, and I'll be your host today. I'm also a talent management consultant and a people strategist with CompTeam. And I'm also the founder and owner of Rocky Mountain Health Advocates and also HR with a Heart. I'm also pleased to be a co-sponsor with Sam Reeve, who's the CEO and founder of CompTeam. And I'm also excited to have Debbie Chernak as the founder and owner of HR Cert Pros, who's helping us with the slide coordination and preparing for today's session. So I'm very pleased to have all of you join us today. We will go through some bios here, and you will have access to this presentation to go through all the different speakers that we will have. And this is a panel, and it's the first series of discussion that CompTeam will be hosting through the COVID-19 outbreak. And our intent is to help small businesses and also HR leaders through this crucial time and epidemic. So I'm going to go through the agenda of what we're going to talk about today. So initially, myself and Lyssa Jackson, with the facilitation of Sam Reeve, will coordinate a discussion related to people strategy during time of crisis and change. Abhishek Humbad will also discuss engaging employees with virtual volunteering. And Kristen Russell and Juliet Fitzgibbons will discuss COVID-19 impact on employee benefits. And lastly, Lyssa Hansard will discuss implementing PPP and tax credits during workforce planning. So we will coordinate this discussion today, and before I hand over the mic, I just want to go through some housekeeping items throughout this discussion. First, on the Zoom platform, this will be available for you as a recording on CompTeam.net after this presentation today. We will also include some attachments and helpful resources and a hard copy of today's presentation. And you'll also find on the CompTeam.net website that you'll find a link to not only the prior presentations that we referred to, because this will be our fourth one on April 15th, and also you'll have agendas for future speaking events that we will refer to as people strategy. Sam Reeve, the CEO of CompTeam, will also send you a registration link so that you can invite other business leaders and HR professionals to future speakers. And also, during the webinar today, we would love for you to be participating in the chats as well as the questions and answers. We will facilitate Q&A throughout the webinar today. And if for any reason we don't get to your question on the chat, we will all work as a team to follow up with you, not only ourselves as the current speakers, but also some of our prior speakers with all their different expertise. And lastly, we encourage you to share this on your social media platforms. This is a free webinar on how to manage during our people crisis and helping companies deal through this, this pandemic. So without further ado, I'm going to kick off our first session. So I'm pleased to introduce you to Lyssa Jackson, and Lyssa is with Corporate Culture Pros and myself. So I'm also going to be part of this conversation. And I, again, am founder of Rocky Mountain Health Advocates and HR with a Heart career coaching. Lyssa is a cultural expert, and the two of us decided to change things up a little bit and have more of an interactive discussion around strategies for a post-crisis change world. And we are going to facilitate a question and answer discussion with the help and facilitation of Sam, who's going to ask us some questions. And this will also tee up some questions for you. So on your chat, we ask you to take a consideration about you as your own business owner or HR related type of representative. Ask yourself these questions and please participate in the chat. We ask you to maybe put what you are thinking in these aspects, and that way we can have more of a participative kind of dialogue. So without further ado, I'd like to have Sam take it away.
Okay, great. So thanks, Char. So, and thank you, Lyssa, for putting together these, or you and Char for putting together these beautiful slides here. But the first piece of this is that there, of course, the COVID-19 situation, the pandemic is put us in a lot of uncertainty. I mean, people are unsure of how to operate their businesses. Employees are unsure of how to respond. And so what are the most essential needs that people have right now, and how do we address that?
Yeah, so this goes without saying, but I'm going to say it, that change generally produces and elevates a lot of fear and anxiety and sometimes panic or frustration. And of course, these emotional responses differ, you know, based on your situation, your circumstances, your personality. But it's really important to remember that we're all feeling that, including leaders. And so what are the most essential needs that people have from their leaders is that really showing up with authenticity and accepting that this change is happening to all of us while being real, because your people need leaders who vocalize that this change isn't temporary, that we are marking a fundamental change in our society that will require new methods of communicating, interacting, problem solving. A lot of the panelists today are going to be diving into the details around that, but it's just that feeling of, hey, this is actually a big deal and this is real. And for people to hear that from their leaders is important. I think the second really biggest thing is listening, listen and care, you know, with compassion and empathy, but that listening piece of checking in on your people who are working remote versus the checking up feeling of how are you doing? How can I help? How's your day to day? All of that, you need to spend more time doing that than you are trying to drive the results of the business. I've, one of my clients is conducting a virtual town hall that allows people to just share their reality, to sort of be witnessed in what they're experiencing. And there's no problem solving, really. It's just thank you for sharing. And I think the other big piece around this one is to be honest about what's going to happen. So if you're in your business, you're not sure of what's going to happen, say that. If you are sure what's going to happen, tell people and give people the honesty and the truth. You don't have to get into the 100 details behind it, but just giving people that trust and that respect to be honest rather than allowing the rumor mill to drive their feelings and escalate their feelings. So I think those are the key points I wanted to make. Char, did you have anything to add on that one?
Oh, absolutely. When you talked about the fear, the anxiety, believe me, my company faced that at the very beginning when all this started happening, for sure.
Yeah, I think that one thing that I would say is that, in before the pandemic, employees had a chance to interact with leadership and just in being around the office and so forth. And now they don't have that ability. And so it's really upon leadership to reach out and connect with their employees, make sure that they feel like they're giving their employees an opportunity to contribute and feel like they're being heard, being a part of the solution instead of being isolated at home. So I know, Char, you mentioned that there's with your business, there's things that you did to respond to this. Could you tell us a little bit more about how you responded with your company?
Oh, absolutely. So it was very fascinating. I think a pivotal day was on March 22nd. We were having a leadership meeting with our employees, and I think that the fear and anger and premature reaction that you'll see on the next slide around what are we going to do relative to our business continuity planning and have a timely response due to this threat. And And so what I appreciated is that as I and Sam and my team of colleagues here started pulling together these HR forums, all of this information that we have been presenting for the last 4 weeks have been so relevant around what is the risk assessment, what is the impact to our businesses, how are we going to sustain this business. So we had to quickly adjust everything that we were doing, our talent management strategies, our cultural strategies, our future of what we're going to do in the future. Perhaps we need to move to a virtual type of company. We are a genetics testing company. Our company actually does a lot of our work in person. We do genetics testing in person, and we can't do that right now. So how are we going to be Rocky Mountain Health advocates and provide services and resources virtually? So that's why we started exploring things like, how about affordable healthcare? How, if we're a genetics company, perhaps we can offer COVID-19 testing, and really start looking at all of my resources and all my networking resources that I had to brush off and start doing again, to look at all these wonderful people with outstanding expertise to help my company sustain and keep us working. Granted, we did have to lay off temporarily some of our employees. That was just heart-wrenching. We were able to keep some of our core staff working, but also reaching out to those employees and making sure they feel cared for, and calling them, contacting them, and applying for the benefits like the PPP and other grants and resources. We're just trying to communicate. So that's how we responded.
Right. So Lyssa, I know that, there's no business out there has been untouched by this change, and they've been forced to deal with this. So what should HR and business leaders should be considering now through the next few months to help guide their organizations?
I just also wanted to, before I answer that, acknowledge I've been looking at the comments that have been placed in the chat. There's some really great additions to what Char and I have been saying, and I appreciate and want to read the chat later, just in terms of some of the specific ways in which you all are also managing the people side of your business. Yeah, so what should HR and business leaders be considering now over the next few months and guiding the organization through this sort of uncertainty, this loss, this grieving stage? There's 3 specific things that I've identified, and this is nowhere near an exhaustive list, but they are things that I am working with my clients on. One of them is something we're going to cover in a lot more detail later in the session, which is workforce planning for the future. So I look at it like with one of my clients, they went 100% remote and they're in New York, and it's a super intense thing there. None of their people had ever really even worked remote prior to that. And yet now there's these conversations about, well, when are we going to bring them all back? And I'm challenging them to think about the fact that remote and virtual work are here to stay, that employees have gotten a taste of what it's like to not have a 2-hour commute to and from work every day in New York in particular. And so I think it's important to collaborate with key employees to determine your long game approach around remote work and flex time. You probably aren't going to have too many companies that probably are not going to go from being all in an office environment to 100% remote forever. But something around a blended solution, I think, that's what's gonna look like. We've just sped up that curve, which was already, I was projecting it in my keynotes to be about a 10-year curve to where we would be working, primarily virtual. But the process by which you decide is really important. So not having leaders just sit in a room and kind of go, everybody's coming back now, but really engaging people within the organization at the front lines of the business to talk that through and plan that. So that's one piece. Number 2, if you haven't already done a robust succession plan, this is kind of showing a weakness as some of leaders are becoming ill, or worst case scenario, passing away. Do you have backup plans in place for your key positions and your key talent? So now is the time to identify the bench strength of your organization and really understand what we're going to do, if we have people who fall ill. learning, and the third one is learning and upskilling. So I think this kind of is a nice benefit of this situation, that there is a little bit more opportunity to go online and learn new skills, even if you're busy with your work and trying to kind of catch up and productive through remote means. Learning and upskilling what new knowledge and skills will be essential. Most organizations will need people who can support automating business functions over the next several years. That's going to be a huge trend. I know that China, when they went back to work, and have started opening up manufacturing plants again, the ones that have been able to get back to productivity the fastest are the ones that had a lot of automation. That might be inviting some of your employees to learn to code. So another example, coaching skills for employee wellness. That's going to be a huge theme. So those are three things that I think are really important there. I just wanted to say quickly, I did a post on LinkedIn yesterday, 5 questions your leadership team should be working through. So if you are not connected to me, Lyssa Jackson at Corporate Culture Pros, you can go ahead and send me a LinkedIn invite and you can see those 5 questions.
Thanks, Lyssa. There's a lot of great suggestions for what we should be doing from the talent side and so forth. Char, what have you done at your company in talent management over the past few weeks?
Yeah, well, it's quite fascinating, because here I am, a talent management strategist and a people strategist. My company, Rocky Mountain Health Advocates, is like a microcosm of applying new talent management strategy. So when the crisis started to occur, impacting my talent management strategy, we had a dashboard actually that we were utilizing, to around what is our recruitment initiatives, what is our learning and capability, what is our competencies needed, what is our, all the measurements and analytics that we had. Well, when all of this started to occur in mid-March, I realized that my talent management strategies needed to shift. Just like the birds in this picture here, everything needed to shift and work in a different manner. So, everything from my co-owners of my company, how we're measuring our productivity, if we were moving, like what Lyssa talked about, to a virtual work environment, what are some ways we can measure our performance? So instead of perhaps the number of tests that we did every week, we used to do genetic testing. Maybe we measure the number of connections that we each are making relative to some of our new affordable healthcare products, the number of introductions that we're doing, and then also in our talent management changes. So for example, the capability and competency of our employees. So for example, one of my employees is our director, Susan Venters, who's on one of our panelists here. She was a director managing people, but perhaps she would be more suited to helping me administratively with all these calls and Zoom appointments. Also, to anticipate and prepare for the talent acquisition when we do open up, when we will open up in the next couple of weeks, we're going to have to ramp up and hire a number of people. So, we're going to have to be prepared of how we can have affordable healthcare and make things that we didn't have before. Maybe our compensation structure has changed. So it has definitely put my talent management strategies in overdrive. And I've definitely been pivoting as quickly as I can with my team and my leadership team.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know we only have a few more minutes on this topic, but quickly, I know, Lyssa, you are a culture expert, and so I'd like to hear a little bit about how you can maintain cultural unity as during this shift from during the pandemic.
There's a flood of information right now that's out on the LinkedIn and the internet about supporting remote workforce. And so I'm not going to dive into the basics of that here, but there's a couple things I wanted to distinguish. The first thing is to actually start with what is your culture. So knowing how your people view your culture, how would you describe the spirit of your culture? For some, it's highly social. For others, it's more about, we're execution and drive oriented. So really, maybe it's centered around the core values. So very important, I think, to actually define what kind of culture you have before this happened, so that then you could solicit your employees' help. And how can we continue our super cool, amazing culture, whatever you've defined it as, in this virtual world? What are some of the things that are going to be really important? Because you don't want to necessarily force people to do virtual happy hours when that's not really part of the culture that you've built prior to this. So the one-on-ones and checking in, very important. I'm just going to reiterate that piece of it. A lot of people have talked about that already. So, but I think it's more culturally, it's more engage the people who are living it in, helping define how can we maintain this in a virtual setting.
Right. Well, what about workforce planning? How should we be thinking about that in the future?
Are you talking to me? That's Char.
Oh, yeah, Char, and or either one of you, it'd be great.
Yeah. Well, I think the workforce planning is relative to our new business model. What if we're going to, like what Lyssa said, if we're moving to a more of a virtual work, and we're not going to be doing as much live in-person healthcare services in my company, your workforce planning is going to shift because the capabilities and competencies of the people that I'm hiring are going to shift, because we were hiring people that had more of a sales type of approach, but now I'm hiring people that are more accustomed to networking and building relationships and connections. So it's having to lead my team to really think about that shift in my workforce planning approach in the future.
And I think there's just going to be a massive shift in a whole lot of industries just around even defining competencies of what we're looking for in the workforce, big time.
Absolutely. I mean, working remotely, I mean, operating remotely like this takes a skill set. So we either need to ramp up or
learned, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Working through the behind the scenes activities here. It's been, yeah.
Well, it's all about coaching and developing, because I think we have amazing talent. A lot of us company owners have amazing talent, and it's a matter of coaching, mentoring, and developing them to the new day of how we operate.
Okay. Well, as we wrap up here on this discussion, what's our vision of the business future? What does that look like?
Well, I think this is an amazing opportunity for us small business owners. I think this has been a huge awakening to if in order to sustain our businesses, that we need to maybe think collectively about our business continuity approach, as Laurel Davies talked about in last week's session. And I think it's awakened us to know that we need to have a diverse type of services and products. And so I'm excited because as I call it rebuilding our house. Our house has been burned down. And that's also what Lyssa talked about in her last session about as nature, we are rebirthing ourselves, so to speak. And so I'm excited. What do you think, Lyssa?
I think that this is a really important time for every organization to rethink their vision and to think about it more in terms of a transformational frame rather than just a incremental change. And a lot of organizations are already trying to make that journey in the face of digital transformation anyway. This has just been a gigantic cataclysmic leap in that direction. And so, there are different elements that have to be considered in transformation than in just incremental change and adapting. And I think that's the conversation that leaders need to be having is what is the vision and what is the relevance of our business model and where can we and should we be pivoting? Those are exciting conversations, but they're also very challenging because you've got to throw a lot of things out the door in the process of doing that. And again, going back to that original question about uncertainty, it makes people really uncomfortable. So being able to, I think as leaders, hold discomfort around your business future is a discipline. It's an act of great discipline.
Great. Well, thank you both, Sam and Lyssa, this is an enlightening discussion in regards to pivoting.
And some really great additions in the chat too that I'd love to make sure that we call out if possible, but that's really, yeah.
So
I know there's a lot of good things in the chat, but we have just due to the amount of time, I think we should go to the next topic and then we can address some of these questions at the end.
Absolutely, at the end. So thank you very much, both of you. So now I'd like to turn things over to Abhishek Humbad, who will speak to us about engaging employees with the virtual volunteering. So happy to have you from Goodera. Abhishek.
Thanks a lot, Char, and it's great to connect with all of you. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity. Today we'll dive deeper into something new which is coming up in a really, really big way, which is virtual volunteering. I'm Abhishek, founder and CEO of Goodera. We have a volunteering and giving platform with more than 1 million employees volunteering, and wanted to share our learnings based on that. So as everyone knows, that work from home is a new reality. As has been discussed across different forums, that this has just with the current pandemic, this has just increased tremendously. With this new reality of working from home, how do you engage employees, especially at this time? And technology becomes a very, very important piece here. If you see from a pure access perspective, how do you access employees who are spread across different parts of the country? You need technology. How do you target employees in the most specific way? You need technology. And for any kind of engagement or enablement, technology becomes a really, really important tool for HR folks to engage with their employees. One thing which has also come up in a big way is that employees now want to also contribute in giving back to the society at this time. As in, everyone has the urge or the need inside them to go and give back, but it is just difficult to just even go outside your home. And that is where virtual volunteering comes into play, which is sitting at home on your desk. How can you go ahead and give back or contribute to your local communities to help them come out of this current crisis, which is working with the local nonprofits on tasks which can take right from a few minutes to many days. And you could also do it both individually or as a team. But essentially, virtually sitting at home, how can you contribute and give back? What this also helps, especially in this time, is a sense of purpose and meaning for employees. Everyone is looking for, there is so much bad news across. So how do you create positivity? And the best way to do it is by going out and contributing to your community. So if you can enable your employees to do it, your employees are wanting to give back, are wanting to contribute. If you as a HR team can enable your employees to do this in a very, very efficient and effective manner, it can be a huge enabler in a culture perspective as on today. So, you need a sense of purpose and meaning. It also crosses boundaries. People remotely can work together. It's not that, it's just one single city or one single location. You could remotely work together. It also helps tremendously from a new skills building. Imagine, a very millennial young employee who is in the mid levels of your organization can actually go and do the work of a board member at a nonprofit, and then build skills which might be relevant for the future perspective. They are contributing in a virtual environment, so they understand how do you best engage and work virtually. So it's a great benefit to the employees. At the same time, it also helps the nonprofits. They are struggling today because of lack of access of volunteers or resources. So using technology as an enabler, employees can give back and contribute to the nonprofits. And for the company or for the enterprise, it's great engagement with a deep sense of meaning and purpose. At the same time, it also helps new skills building, collaboration between the employees in a way which actually helps the world become a better place. And also helps create a very strong and positive employer brand in this time. So, if all employees can come together and you could enable them to contribute to give back to the society, volunteering virtually, it's a great benefit at a very, very low cost that you could provide to our employees as of now. Moving forward, virtual volunteering also enables volunteers to volunteer from anywhere and make a difference. And there are a whole bunch of things which employees can do. What we at Goodera have done is trying to understand what nonprofits need at this time, and created different categories of potential volunteering opportunities which employees can do either individually or as teams. So if you are a tech company, employees can help in technology development. They can do training, they can do mentorship. There is a whole bunch of different virtual volunteering opportunities which are present, which Goodera has sourced from different from a nonprofit network across the world. It's right from outreach and advocacy to art and design to writing and editing. There is different kinds of activities which employees can do either individually or in groups or in teams or with their kids or with their families together and contribute back to their local communities. It creates immense internal sense of satisfaction and positivity, and also creates huge respect for the company that they are just beyond. The company is not just about making profits, but beyond that, beyond just giving back to the community in a way that creates a very, very deep bond. These are some of the testimonials. So for example, at one of our clients, they have an online story reading virtual volunteering opportunities where employees read out stories to kids in different parts of the world, right from orphanages or reading stories to old age homes. It's really, really interesting, the conversations. At the same time, a lot of online career advice, especially in this time when there is so much uncertainty. A lot of youngsters want career advice, and virtually you could go ahead and give back and volunteer. Again, a very, very positive feeling for the employee when they do it, but also a great way for the community to progress further. What we have done at Goodera is opened up our platform pro bono, free of cost, to all companies, wherein if your employees want to come and volunteer virtually, they could just come on this link and sign up. So employees can come here, browse different sorts of volunteering opportunities. You could apply one-click registration. It's a very, very simple thing. It's like an Airbnb for volunteering, as we call it. It's very simple, very intuitive, very easy to use, and employees can just search for the activities where they can contribute the best in the locations where they are, and start contributing from day zero, either spending a couple of minutes to a couple of days based on the appetite of the employees. But our philosophy and our mission is to help employees do good at this time and feel positive, and enable companies to enable their employees feel good and positive by contributing to the society. There are different kinds of opportunities as well. We have essentially like a catalog of volunteering opportunities, and all of this can actually be linked to a donation campaign as well. So if you want to donate internally for a cause, you could do it. These are some examples. So let's say in the developing technology piece, if you have software developers or coders in your organization, they can review codes, and that takes just between 2 to 5 hours, but it's extremely satisfying for an employee to review code for nonprofits, which can help them in their cause or a mission better. There are a lot of mentorship and coaching volunteering opportunities as well, which again, spending an hour or spending a couple of minutes, you can actually make a difference in someone else's lives. All your learnings, all your experience, you can help, and all of this helps create positivity and bond in the community, in the employee, in their families, and in their teams, and in the organization, which becomes extremely critical at this time. And especially for millennials or the younger generation, they actively want to start doing good very early in their lives and not after retirement. And when they want to do good, they actually also want to see the impact of what they do. So through the Goodera platform, they also get access to a whole bunch of impact metrics, that because of their intervention, what is the impact on the ground, what is the impact for the nonprofits, what is the impact for the end beneficiaries whom employees are speaking with, right from, let's say, employees, if they help a nonprofit make a social media strategy, that leads to more donations, or that leads to more volunteers. So you could see the impact, capture that, quantify it, and we share it back with the employees. And all of that gets aggregated, and Goodera helps companies share it with their broader community on social media, either on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. That creates a very, very powerful employer brand, but also creates, a much bigger sense of purpose of the company, by the company, and for the company across their community. And that's, I think extremely relevant and very, very powerful in today's time. And I would urge all of you to enable your employees to do good at this time. And we would be happy to provide, all these virtual volunteering opportunities to you. It's a curated set of opportunities which you could share it amongst your employees, and would love to have some good karma happening, very soon. And happy to answer any questions, and would love to connect with you after this as well. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Abhishek. So I did see it. Can you just restate the website again that all of our participants can go to?
Yeah, it's volunteering.goodera.com, and we'll share it after the webinar as well with everyone. But it's volunteering.goodera.com.
Great. And Debbie just shared that. Thank you so much, Debbie. That is super fantastic. As we are going through repurposing ourselves, it's so vital that each of us have focus on a value. I always say it's better that instead of sitting on the couch watching daytime TV, it's probably more healthy to focus on something that's going to give back to our community, give back to our employees and our leaders. So this is just a phenomenal resource, Abhishek, and I really appreciate it. I even talk about, career transformation. What can we do differently to do career coaching, or what can we do to volunteer, such as mentoring, coaching, particularly our youth right now. So I'm so excited. How long have you been doing this, Abhishek?
We have been doing this for close to 4 years now. Our volunteering opportunities are spread in 40 different countries, US being the largest. And we have close to 1 million employees of our clients volunteering, right from Fortune 500 companies to, companies with even 5 to 10 employees. It's a spread across, different sectors and geographies with a common mission and a purpose to do good. And we enable them to do it in their local communities, so that you could also see that and also feel that and also contribute in areas where you really feel the need is. But it's across different types of opportunities as well, based on the relevant need in the local communities.
That's fantastic. I do see in our question and answer, it says, anonymous, somebody said, can we run a donation campaign with Goodera as well? Like, where can I give my employees an opportunity to donate to the cause of COVID-19? Yeah, so we are actually running a special campaign for COVID-19, where there are nonprofits working specifically for that cause, and you could donate to that cause, right from helping the frontline healthcare workers to helping getting masks for different sections of the society. So there is a whole bunch of different things. One really interesting volunteering activity is also you could sew masks at your home, and we could help them get collected and delivered to the local nonprofits or the local old age homes where people elderly who might not be able to go out and do this. So there is a whole variety of things which you could do. But yeah, you could also donate through our platform, and there is a curated set of nonprofits who are working specially for COVID-19. That is absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much. I mean, this is near and dear to my heart, as I call HR with the heart. So thank you so much for your time today, Abhishek. Appreciate that. And those resources and websites are also in the chat if anyone would like some of those resources. And if you want additional questions, you can ask us in there. So moving forward, we are now going to transition to discussing COVID-19 and impacts on benefits. So we have Kristen Russell and Juliet Fitzgibbons that is going to discuss that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Char, and to everybody that has helped put this together. Excuse me, I just turned off my video. We are delighted to be here with you. My name is Kristen Russell. I'm the founder and managing partner of Fall River Employee Benefits, and we are Our mission is to be the most innovative and proactive benefits broker on the Colorado Front Range. So we're delighted to share with you some updates, and I am going to turn it over for starters to my colleague Juliet Fitzgibbons. If we can get her video and sound turned on, we will jump right into our updates.
Great. Thanks so much, Kristen. Hey, everyone. Thanks again for joining us today. I hope you and your families are all staying safe and healthy today. Since the announcement of the COVID pandemic, there's been so many changes, and honestly, I think that most of us have been overwhelmed by the amount of information that it's been really challenging for everyone to keep up. So we've been sharing these weekly updates with our clients and colleagues, and we wanted to make sure that you also had access to this information. So embedded on this page, which you all will receive copies of, is a link to our most recent weekly wrap-up that was sent out on Monday, so as of April 13th. And so that update included a white paper, so perspectives on COVID and particularly on the property and casualty coverages. It also had a recording of a construction industry update as well. So it was a recording of a webinar that we hosted, I believe last Wednesday or Thursday, which is really interesting. And then it's also going to have a registration link to our most upcoming webinar, which is going to be tomorrow, hosted tomorrow, Thursday, April 16th at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. And that webinar is primarily going to focus on the analysis of the CARES Act and really the impacts to small businesses. So you can register on our COVID dashboard. It is a public site. It's going to have news, basically updated news from day to day, legal alerts, infographics, and other resources. So in addition to some of the legal updates, carriers have also been sending out information. So I wanted to provide a brief summary about the major announcements here as well. So first, we've had testing and treatment for COVID is typically covered at no charge to enrollees, provided it's on a fully insured medical plan. So if you are an employer or work for an employer that sponsors a self-funded or partially self-funded plan, it's really up to the employer if those services are going to be covered at no cost to enrollees. So there's also many telemedicine vendors, and some of those are already included with your medical coverage and your medical plans, but they're going to be waiving cost sharing for services related to COVID. So make sure you're checking with your providers on that as well. Now carriers are also supplying honestly daily and weekly updates and FAQs. So if you're not receiving those, make sure you reach out to your broker to make sure that you are receiving them, because again, things are changing so quickly that these carriers are trying to get out as much information as possible. Many of the carriers are offering what's called the SEP or special enrollment period. And it basically will allow employees, including any dependents that previously waived medical coverage, to enroll in benefits retroactive to April 1st. The enrollment deadlines do vary by carrier, and most of them are ending today. So make sure you're working with your broker if you're interested in offering that to your employees. And in addition, our state exchange program, Connect for Health Colorado, they're also hosting a special enrollment period, and that's going to be through the end of the month through April 30th. Now there's some EAP resources as well regarding those employee assistance programs. You may have a standalone benefit typically through your disability carrier or coverage, but there's many medical carriers that are also offering free EAP resources to help employees and their families receive basically any type of assistance, primarily mental health care assistance, even if those employers are not enrolled on your medical plan. So this is a big one, so make sure you're taking advantage of those. And then we'll focus now on flexible spending account considerations because in addition to medical updates, there's many other lines of coverage that have been modified as well. So on flexible spending accounts, if employees no longer have childcare for their children due to COVID, they are now allowed to modify their dependent care account premium contributions. And in addition to that, the medical FSA has become more lenient in allowing over-the-counter medications to be included for reimbursement without a prescription from doctors. And it's also now covering menstrual products, which is a big change. There's also been extensions on the 2019 contributions to health savings accounts. So participants on those accounts have until July 15th to make those catch-up contributions. Now, I think carriers are realizing the burden on employers, so they're allowing mid-year benefit changes to plans as well as changes to premium contributions. There are notification requirements though. Right now it's 60 days. So if you plan to make those changes, there are specific notification requirements you have to follow. You'll also want to consider or look at the WARN Act because those guidelines do vary by state as well. There's also some resources that can help you maintain your status as being an employer of choice. So make sure you're working with your broker to look at recent benchmarking studies to see how those, basically to see how your benefits stack up. We anticipate that it'll be interesting to see in the next few months what type of reductions are going to be shown and how those benchmarking studies will change. But if you do make those changes, you do have to stay compliant with ACA affordability calculations and your ERISA obligations if you are a company that's subject to ERISA. So some examples of that is if you need to update your plan documents or annual notices, those are things you're required to provide to your benefits eligible employees. Again, your broker should be able to assist you with all these items.
And Juliet, if I may jump in for just a moment, there's a lot of confusion out there about which companies are subject to ERISA. People have the misimpression that it's only large employers over 100 employees or it's only for retirement plans. If you are a private employer or a nonprofit, anything but a government or church entity, you are subject to ERISA requirements on your health plan if you have even one participant. So employers of all sizes are subject to ERISA plan document and notification requirements. There's a lot involved and we want to make sure you're working with your broker on that.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Kristen. And then finally, last thing I wanted to mention on this slide has to do, again, telemedicine. Really now is the time to promote this benefit. There's so many ways to connect virtually, whether it's phone or email with your doctors, video chat, or even chat live features with your doctor. It would be amazing to distribute as much as you can and communicate these options to employees. All right, next slide, please, Debbie. All right, so I wanted to show and share a few infographics that we thought might be helpful for those of you on the line today. So since the laws have changed so frequently in the last few weeks, really what this is a very high level chart just to show you how the laws may apply to you and to your employees, and it's really based on very specific situations. So we think this is one of the charts we've been referencing quite a bit lately. We don't have enough time to go line by line here, but you're welcome to go again to our public COVID dashboard. That's the one I mentioned on that first slide. There's this infographic, honestly, dozens of other helpful infographics related to COVID. They're all absolutely free to you. And if you prefer, you're welcome to email or reach out to Kristen or myself and we can get you copies of those slides as well, or the infographics as well. Now, this is another convenient infographic that we can provide. In fact, I've broken this up into 2 separate slides, but basically it's a flow chart. And it just basically indicates if you as an employer are subject to EFMLEA, it's a mouthful, so you can receive some quick guidance here. And on the next slide, it's basically a follow-up to this first flow chart, and it's a separate chart, but it's really gonna determine if the employee is eligible and has met very specific requirements. Again, these are all available to you for free. So let us know if you're interested and we can email those over to you, or you can download them in a PDF format from our COVID website. Now, one of the most common questions that we have been receiving is about furloughed employees. And so we included a slide about how employers should be collecting premiums during the time that an employee is basically on a leave of absence or furloughed. So there's 3 methods to choose from. You can see on your screen here, pay in advance, pay as you go, pay upon return. You can either utilize one method or a combination of the methods, but there are several rules to follow. So we won't go through all the details today, but feel free to read through them. And if you have questions, reach out to Kristen or myself and we can help walk you through some of those options as well. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Kristen to walk us through some cost containment strategies.
And just wanted to mention, I saw a question in the chat of where do we go to the public COVID-19 dashboard that Juliet referenced. Sam mentioned that he's going to send out the slides to everybody, and that will include the live links in our presentation to get to our public COVID-19 dashboard. You do not need to be a Fall River client, and we welcome you to use all those resources. So I think we may, what we're going to focus on now is kind of looking to the future. So Juliet talked about some of the situations you need to consider right now in the midst of the COVID pandemic. But, you know, as an advisor of mine shared yesterday, we need to not just be looking at the immediate thing in front of us. We need to lift our eyes to the horizon and be looking at what we need to focus on going forward. And so everybody is looking to save money now in light of the financial impact of COVID-19. And there are some ways you can do that immediately on your healthcare, but it's also one of the most important things that an organization can be doing in general is to be working to make sure that they have a sustainable healthcare cost strategy. People may say to themselves, well, we get a single-digit renewal every year, so that's not that bad. But actually, if you get just an 8% renewal every year, which doesn't sound horrible, your healthcare costs are going to double in less than a decade. And that's catastrophic to your workforce. And so you need a game plan to be making sure that your healthcare costs are on a path that's sustainable. So we're working with all of our employers to make sure they've got at least these 5 points in place in their healthcare strategy to ensure that they're bending the trends of their healthcare and making sure they have a path for sustainability. You know, we won't go through every point on this, but just making sure that you are rethinking the system of healthcare delivery in terms of healthcare. We have a broken healthcare system in a lot of ways, and people are getting care. So Debbie, if you wouldn't mind just going back real quick, sorry about that. We are helping people rethink their healthcare delivery system because they need to be thinking about what networks are most efficient, how to drive with their plan design people to the more cost-effective locations. Thank you, Debbie. And making sure that people are being efficient in their use of care. We need to use our incentive structures to design value-based benefits. What you really want is healthy employees, not just paying for a lot of sick care, but it's very critical that you take an aggressive approach with your plan design to make sure that that's what your healthcare is buying you. We need to, most wellness plans don't work, and so we need to help you and make sure that you are getting a structure that is going to truly help your people get healthier. Then we need to make sure we're creating great consumers of healthcare, because there's the only other parallel to healthcare is where people don't know how much things cost and don't care how much it costs. The only parallel I can think of is a teenager at the mall with their parents' credit card. We need to make sure that people are being smart about how they choose healthcare and using your dollars wisely. And then finally, once you've done all these great things, we need to make sure that the reward of those activities goes to you and not just to the bottom line of your health insurer. So thank you, Debbie. Next slide. The path of this takes aggressive work all throughout the year. If your broker's waiting till renewal to talk about that, it's really too late. So there's some best practices that we think that people need to be doing with regard to health improvement and wellness in their organization, making sure that you have a fundamental account design, an account-based design that gets people engaged in being good consumers in the nature of their design, whether that's a high deductible health plan with an HSA or some type of HRA that rewards them for smart consumerism. That's sort of a foundation. Then we want to make sure you've got the data you need through biometric screens and health risk assessments to know what your risks are and how to manage those over time. Then we want to engage your members in a couple different ways that they can lower your risk by participating in some activities. So this is important stuff, and you can move on, Debbie, to make sure that we're getting a sustainable healthcare cost path. If you can get your trends down to low single digits instead of high single digits, that makes a massive difference in your sustainability, and we've had some success with helping employers do that. Finally, for those of you who are large employers or you have a self-funded plan, we are developing an actuarial model to help people be able to estimate what their healthcare costs, how they're going to be impacted by COVID-19. And so we are going to be looking at the demographics of employers' populations, based on where your employees are, whether your employees are, mostly in a rural area or mostly in New York City or Seattle or some other hotspot of COVID-19, what kind of healthcare costs you can expect to hit your large plan or your self-funded plan in the coming year. So that model's coming soon, and we very much invite you to reach out for a free consultation for us. And the next slide will have a link where you can contact us so that we can help you start to ballpark estimate what kind of risk you might be facing. So our contact info is on this last slide here. Once you get the slides, you can also click this Contact Us Today link, and that will send us an email directly to get in touch with us. And we look forward to advising you on how to keep your healthcare costs sustainable what to expect in the face of COVID-19, and anything else that you might be facing with regard to your healthcare benefits.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kristen and Juliet. This is definitely a crucial time to look at our benefits and our overall health for our employees, and very critical. And, you know, that is also from a personal perspective, my company has been exploring other healthcare options and benefits. And so we have been learning a lot, and we appreciate that you've been involved in helping to educate us around all those different options and resources. So you speak about insurance. Is there other types of healthcare benefits beyond insurance, just to clarify?
Well, sure. I mean, we think that employers should be helping employees get healthy in all the ways, you know, whether they're using an on-site clinic or direct primary care, or just heavy focus on behavioral health and telemedicine to make sure that employees are taking care of their entire whole body, whole person needs with regard to healthcare. EAPs are a key element of that, to make sure that they get, as is financial wellness, to make sure they get the whole person addressed.
Yeah, so mental health is so crucial. So do you see kind of a trend in more of a holistic outside of the traditional healthcare model? Because that's what I used to work with, is the traditional healthcare companies. Do you see a move in more of that holistic medicine?
You know, it varies. I do see, in Colorado in particular, patients have long been seeking alternative treatment and medicine. We do see that the traditional healthcare companies are offering much more coverage than they used to, say, for alternative modalities such as acupuncture, chiropractic, functional medicine, or naturopathy doctors, that type of thing. There's a little bit more attention to that here in Colorado. In the plans, I do see employers having much more focus on the whole person wellness. You know, we talk in our wellness discussions with employers about the 8 dimensions of wellness. Physical is just one of those. So there's more of that, but I do think that the traditional insurance foundation with its catastrophic care absolutely needs to be there. I think that, just a pure, I'm not going to have insurance because I just use alternative medicine, unfortunately, is lacking the protection that we all need should a major injury happen, or should someone be diagnosed with COVID-19. If you need to be on a ventilator in the hospital for 14 days, you're looking at a 6-figure hospital bill. That's not something that an alternate or sharing ministry or any of those types of plans can really handle.
Okay. Well, excellent. Well, great presentation. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your participation.
Happy to help with any questions in the chat.
Yep, absolutely. So again, all these questions are in the chat, and when we wrap up at the very end, we will attempt to go through as many of these questions as we can. And then also, if we don't address it at the end, then we will follow up with you individually. So now we are about to learn about implementing PPP, or tax credits, as we transition with workforce planning with Lyssa Hansard. So this is so critical. And again, from a personal perspective, we are also looking at these types of grants and loans. So thank you, Lyssa, for helping us understand workforce planning in this time.
Absolutely. So in terms of the PPP and CARES Act relief options, I would definitely recommend talking to your accountant or corporate attorney if that's who you're working with on this stuff. I will touch on it briefly and provide some information, but really am focusing here on workforce planning. So business changes and planning for the future are really, really, really critical right now, not just for the future as in the next 3 months, but the reality is that we should expect as business leaders that the change back to some new version of normal is going to take time, that we have implemented a lot of things or will be implementing a lot of things to manage through this crisis that cannot just be undone overnight. And I love this quote from a recent New York Times article on what 9/11 taught us. And the most important thing, I think, even if we go back to the bubonic plague in the 1600s, is that we as leaders and businesses need to be creating solutions and thinking long-term about reimagining our businesses. Even if they're slight adjustments are really important. My slides are a little bit delayed here, but there we go. Right now, you and your business could be in any number of places in terms of whether you're looking at downsizing, whether you already have downsized, whether you furloughed people and are now bringing people back because you have gotten additional funding, and your staff may be half the size or 100% where it was a month ago. It's really important that you are aware as a leader that there is a need for a call to action today, for a forward-thinking perspective for the sake of your employees. And really that's what this presentation is all about, is thinking about the forward opportunity with your employees. So there are near-term needs, of course. There are things that right now, given the current environment and the stay-at-home orders and the very far off date of return to school dates for those with children, need to be addressed. And the primary goal there is around stabilization. In terms of going forward, we really do need to understand and be thinking as leaders about how we reimagine the future given what's happening right now. So what does our future look like? How does it change the way that we move forward? How does it change our investment and our leadership approach? Certainly the ideal leader has not changed, but where our focus is and what we need to be thinking about and how and what we need to be communicating has. Stabilization. So immediate, near term, what are we doing? Your business may have already gone through some version of all three of these phases and had different drivers than what's listed here. I will tell you that a lot of our clients have already done the employee transition thing and working through the job alignment and development pieces. What's really important to note here is that if you are still struggling to determine what transitions need to happen with your team, or you haven't taken effort, I would strongly encourage you to do it now. And what I mean by that is start with your core value chain. What is it as a business? What is your key deliverable to the organization? I'm not a marketer or a salesperson, but I would encourage you to talk with a marketer or a salesperson about what that core value chain is, how it's changing, and how that changes your job alignment and your team alignment. And then finally, what are you doing with your team right now? I'm expecting that the entire economic recession is impacting all businesses. So how do we redesign our workforce? How do we develop the knowledge, skills, and abilities that we need today? What are we doing around community outreach? So many of our presenters this morning have already touched on this stuff, and I love that there's additional options out there that you guys are thinking about. Are there free products and services that you can be offering right now, or getting grants or additional funding to actually shift your business in this time of crisis? The CARES Act. So I am not going to do a deep dive on this, but there are three primary things that employers are doing. The one we're seeing the most of is the PPP loan. And we're struggling with, okay, we're a restaurant and wine distribution business, and we've laid off 80% of our staff, and now we got the PPP loan, we're going to bring them all back, but what do they do? Because our restaurants aren't open yet. So that's where workforce planning comes in, and these are some of the funding mechanisms. In addition to the disaster loan, which has been out and available for a long time, and we've seen many people take advantage of, there's also the tax credit opportunity. There are a lot of grants out there right now. I would encourage you to look for them, seek them out. Depending on what your business does and the ownership model, there are a lot of grant opportunities out there in this environment. And again, please talk to your accounting, tax accountant or accounting firm. So some examples, we have several clients who have already gone through the employee transition stuff and are now trying to figure out, okay, we've gotten additional funding and we've realigned our focus. What do we do next? We have one client that's a linen company. Their primary customer are hotels and restaurants. As you can imagine, in end of February, they started seeing a massive decline in orders. And by the time March rolled around, had laid off 90% of their manufacturing staff. They have gotten the PPP loan. And during the period that they went between receiving the PPP loan and laying everyone off, we did a workforce planning exercise with them and got them to the point where we were able to repurpose their products that they already have available and that they're just waiting to use, and realign jobs and scopes in order to deliver face masks and linens to hospitals and emergency services. There was, of course, a team of people who had to work on a new distribution methodology and figure out how to service a whole new client set. But they've done it and are happily bringing back the vast majority of their furloughed staff this week. Our next client that I'm going to be sharing about is a school environment. So we have several community centers that are attached to early learning centers here in Colorado, and we have one that's quite large, and they, of course, are a school and had to shut down. And the schools, how they fund the community center and all of the community activities, which is also shut due to the stay-at-home order. So they've pretty much laid off their entire staff. They did receive the PPP loan, which is amazing because they are now bringing back, I want to say something like 500 of their 700 employees in the next month. It'll be a rolling return. And we're right now working through how do we partner with some other local organizations that do a little bit more R&D and the education and community space. How do we partner with them to do free work during this time? How do we leverage our staff for redesigning the way that we do early childhood education and community living? And what can we do online? So this is all work that the experts in this organization are defining, and we're helping them think about their staff planning and their talent realignment given their new programs. And then the final case study, we do have an oil and gas that produces large machinery that we work with. And as you can imagine, not only is COVID-19 a challenge, but the oil and gas industry is hurting pretty badly right now. So we have slowly over time helped them to furlough staff as they figure out what to do with their decreasing production levels. And at this point are now looking at bringing people back to set them up for success as we begin to build and plan for further production. We are completely, I should say, are completely redesigning their engineering function, what they're designing, how they're designing, and in order to support how they're building for future markets going forward. Yes, I'm seeing a note about the education process. It is a great time to rethink education. Certainly having everyone sit in front of their computers all the time is not ideal, but there's a lot of opportunity in that space. So going forward, your long-term plan, like I said earlier, and many of our speakers this morning have indicated the same thing. This will change us forever. This crisis will, and maybe in the long term, it's in small ways, but I would encourage you as business leaders to be thinking about 12 months from now, not just the next 3 months, but what's happening in these 3-month period that you need to be thinking about how to apply and affect what you do for the next 12 months. And I've laid out here some of the key buckets that we are seeing leaders spend their focus and time on in terms of the long term. One is total rewards. None of you should be surprised that employers of all sizes right now are really thinking about what does the future of flexible work arrangements look like? What does the future of time off look like? Some states are even initiating some requirements around that right now. What does recognition look like long term? If you're not in an office and working with people, how do your pay and incentives change? Do they need to change? Do the way that you pay people actually need to change? And then of course, as Kristen and Juliet talked about earlier, there are a lot of other wellness and medical benefit programs that probably need to be looked at. In terms of communication, I expect that you're all very acutely aware of the need for increased frequency and the diversity of vehicles that are necessary to communicate. I would also encourage you to be really purposeful about the multi-intention of communications. Your role as a leader is no longer just to manage the business and lead your employees with your communications. It's also to ensure that you're checking in on their well-being, their sense of purpose, and their sense of alignment to your organization, and to share your vision for what that change might look like. In the space of talent management, I think everyone has touched on the idea of job realignment, looking differently at your workforce plans. Really the two that we are spending the most time on right now as HR consultants is how are you calibrating expectations? How are you reevaluating and rearticulating the expectations of people's jobs? I don't think that this is going to go away 12 months from now, but right now it's critically important. So are you being honest with the fact that your employees' productivity and time that they work, and not just in hours, but time of day that they work might be changed or different right now? And how are you supporting them in their productivity efforts? And there's a whole other series that someone can do about productivity. We're seeing a lot of it in the news right now. And then how are you developing your talent during this time? Both either because you have additional funds that you can spend on that or for some other reason. We're seeing a lot of talk about future investment. So as we get to a point of stabilization, what are you going to invest in first? I think Char talked a little bit about this in her business and her reimagined future. So technology is an obvious one. I think compliance is going to be really important, and safety of our staff is going to be really important. Collaboration, of course, there are a lot of free tools out there that everyone's using, but there are more sophisticated solutions. And it's an area that I think all of the tech companies out there that provide these types of solutions are investing in heavily right now, and we're going to see employers do more. And then change management. How are we going to do that more effectively in the future? And finally, I personally think the most important thing is that your role as a business leader is shifting a little bit. Again, the ideal leader stays the same. This is throughout history. It hasn't really changed, but you have this added component now that safety doesn't just mean OSHA checks in a manufacturing environment. Safety actually means, do your staff feel safe to come back to work? And how do you support them to ensure that they are safe? Does your staff feel safe working at home? Do they have the kind of mental capacity to manage and support themselves there? While you as an employer are not responsible for people's mental health, it's certainly becoming a lot more important that you're checking in on it and that we're at least aware of it and acknowledging in the current environment. Connectivity. It's no longer just everyone kind of connects based on the people that they connect, that they relate to, or that they sit next to at the office. It is our job as leaders to not only sponsor, but create opportunities for connectivity. You can't sit back and expect your team to, in their current environment, to wait or to create their own virtual happy hours. You all should be, as leaders, figuring out ways to create connectivity. And most importantly, contribution. Our team members, their entire worlds have changed in terms of how they operate, where they operate, and what they're doing. Thinking about and proactively planning for providing that call to action, that sense of purpose. It is the number one thing in any engagement survey, any engagement analysis you will find out there, from Gallup, from HRB, from Harvard Business Review, from the New York Times and Wall Street Journal. Having a sense of purpose and a tie to the leadership's vision is most important. Our visions are all up in the air. It's okay if they change. It's okay if you're adjusting them every couple of weeks, but sharing your vision and sharing where you're at is crucial right now, especially in terms of aligning our employees' purpose and their drive and what they're focused on. I did not go into as much around the workforce planning solutions that are out there, but there's so much information that is free and spread all over the place right now. And certainly if you'd like to talk more, give us a call or email us. Our information is there. We're happy to talk with you. No cost, just give us a call. We're happy to work through any problems with you or challenges you're thinking about facing.
Well, thank
Char,
you.
oh, sorry. Char, this is Lyssa. I actually just wanted to really quickly add to something Lyssa, is it Lyssa or Lyssa?
Lyssa, yeah.
Lyssa said about, I thought this was a really interesting idea that I heard on a webinar that Patrick Lencioni gave, the author of 5 Dysfunctions of a Team and a lot of really good books on leading. And he said, right now, you should develop a temporary rallying cry for your organization. And I thought that was such a great way to hold what you're talking about with purpose, because as you pointed out, and we all know, the purpose of your business may be up in the air right now, or in some ways really under fire. So anyway, I just wanted to add that little bit, that I think that's a really powerful thing to look at. What is it that we want to accomplish right now, or what is our purpose right now, which may not be something that we look at as a long-term vision.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I would say as a current business owner, so with two hats that I wear in the HR space as well as owning a business, my business partner, Bruce, has been dealing with applying for those PPP loans as well as the other grants and loans. And I have to say, from a personal perspective, as we're trying to move through the sustainability of our company, it has been very confusing, I would tell you, just working with the banks and the forms and the taxes and all the documentation that we need to have. So it's very helpful, Lyssa, that you've been able to give us some clarity in that as we move through. It's like, I think we are literally working more than 24 hours a day and trying to balance. You know, not only are we going to try to get our resources and funding to keep our business sustained, but also we have to look at our talent management strategies and our culture and our talent management strategies and workforce planning strategies. So it's quite a balance. So I would suggest anybody that is watching this to go back and re-listen to this recording, because I think you brought up some amazing information, Lyssa. So, so moving forward, so thank you very much. What I'm going to coordinate now is more the housekeeping aspects of our forum today. So before I get into the question and answer section, so during the presentation today, we've seen just amazing discussion going on relative to the chat and the Q&A. And so before we get to an open dialogue about the Q&A and discussion, to have an open forum of answering those questions, just want to get to some housekeeping aspects. And then also we're going to open this up probably after that half hour. So if anyone wants to hang on, and we can continue answering some of those discussions. So we've discussed a lot of topics today, and there's so much more to discuss. And Sam and I and CompTeam will be hosting a people strategy forum moving forward. So the first 4 sessions were on the HR forum related to the COVID-19. This is the first 4 sessions. Then moving forward, we plan to do the people strategy sessions. So we are going to host a variety of speakers with various subject matter experts in related to that. Also, Sam is going to send you, or at least put on CompTeam.net, the recorded webinar, copies of slides, and also any additional resources for you. So I assume that many of you have other business leaders or HR type related colleagues that might need these resources. So we're going to do that as well. Also, we encourage you to continue inviting with registration link that you'll find on CompTeam.net to anyone that you think is going to need these resources. And also, we highly encourage you to listen to the prior recordings. We've had excellent resources such as Amy, who I think joined us recently, who is an employment law attorney, and she has some excellent information about how we deal with the time of compliance and regulatory things. Also, we want to ask that you share today's webinar in your social networks, like I mentioned before. And every week, Sam and I will be sharing these forums, again, more people strategy forums on LinkedIn and various other social media platforms. So please share. This is free. We're not charging anything, and we are going to have some amazing presenters moving forward. In addition, we'll be re-inviting people back, presenters and expertise to future forums. So at this point, what we'd like to do is open this up. This is more of the question and answer period. And looking at my phone, we are about 11:18. So we are now opening up questions and answers. So does anybody on my panel here have some questions they've seen in the chat box or Q&As?
So this is Sam. I would like to hear and see if there's any update on the legal front, if Amy is willing to share if there's been any changes since our last discussion.
Hi, Sam, and hi, everybody. I'm glad to be joining. The updates, unfortunately, are that everything is taking a lot longer than had been promised. And it's causing, as Lyssa mentioned during her part of her presentation, a lot more anxiety and a lot more stress in terms of planning. So some of the things that we were hoping were going to alleviate stress for the small businesses, including the EIDL, the emergency loans, and the PPP loans, have been very slowly trickling out to companies. The EIDL, which was the emergency grant, it changed from $10,000, that would be a non-returnable grant, to $1,000 per employee with a maximum of $10,000, and very few employers are seeing that money actually hitting their bank accounts. With regard to the PPP loan, again, as Lyssa mentioned, the hardest hit industry is restaurant and delivery and food service. And quite frankly, we're learning from them that that loan, even if it was to be provided in a timely manner, is not really helpful because they can't bring their employees back during the time frame that has been required, which is the end of June. So even if they took the loan, it wouldn't be forgiven. And so that's become a problem. So unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot more of my clients shift from the concept of furlough or salary cuts to actually doing reductions in force, which is disappointing.
That's too bad.
Amy, I had one question to tag on to that. Is the requirement that if you get the PPP loan that you bring your employees back by the end of June, or are you required to bring them back once you receive the PPP funds?
No, the requirement is that you bring back your FTEs or your full-time employee numbers back to what you had right before you received the loan by the end of June. So you can operate with a reduced staff or a staff that's on a reduced salary through that 8-week period that you're receiving the loan funds, and it won't impact the loan forgiveness if you bring people either back. And it doesn't, I don't think necessarily need to be the same employees, but if you bring your employment numbers back up, or if you bring the salaries back up to 100%.
However, I should just add that employers only have 8 weeks to spend the loan. So
Right.
if your loan is based on everyone's salaries and you don't have anyone to pay, then you're not spending the loan, and you only have 8 weeks to do it. So that's also a challenge, I think, for a lot of industries that are shut down right now.
Well, and the challenge is amplified, Lyssa, by the fact that, again, the original loan concept was that you're going to be able to take out this money based on your payroll expenses from 2019, knowing that you would have a little bit of a cushion and you could use it for your rent, you could use it for leases, you could use it for utilities. And then they came back out and said that no, in fact, only 25% of it could be used for those non-payroll expenses. So in effect, the small businesses I think they're finding a lot of frustration with either not getting it in a timely fashion or not being able to use it. And then the other thing I should add, which is also impacting our small businesses, is that the CARES Act relief for unemployment is really slow in coming through. So most states, even if they're accepting unemployment claims from either self-employed or 1099 or reduced salary workers, those workers are not getting that $600 weekly benefit, and they're going back to their employers and saying, hey, I need a loan. I need something to tide me over because I know you had good intentions that I would sort of be getting my state unemployment and my federal, what I will call a top up, but it's not coming through.
Thank you, Amy. We just had a question about lump sum. So for example, my company, we need we're wondering if we can pay lump sum out with our PPP benefit.
That's a good question, and I don't know if Lyssa knows the answer to that, but I don't know. I don't think that there is a restriction on how it's used. I would think there's going to be some flexibility in terms of, as long as you can show that it was for payroll costs. If you're sort of trying to true up people who are in arrears, I will go out on a limb and say that I think that that would be acceptable.
Yep. As I will tell you, though, that there was a comment made by a couple of different banks that we're working with clients that have said, make sure that it's not out of the ordinary, right? So so the answer is yes, I think, but be careful that you're not, giving yourself an $80,000 bonus and expecting that to be forgiven, I guess is my point, unless that's something you normally do every quarter.
No, that's not what we want to do.
Yeah.
Even then it's limited to $100,000 on an annualized basis, right? In terms
Right.
of
And to be clear, they're also, Amy mentioned this, they're looking at headcount. So it does matter. You're forgivable, whether it's forgivable or not is they're looking at your headcount. So if, for example, there is opportunity for fraud here, but for example, if a owner just paid themselves and didn't pay their 20 employees during that period, that would obviously be a red flag.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you both. This is so crucial. I'm going through this right now. I see that Debbie Chernak brought up that we have a question regarding HRCI credits at this time. We have not submitted the form for credit. Does that question make sense?
Yes, that's correct. So I
that's
wanted to jump into the Q&A. There's a question that Lyssa would like to answer live. This came in earlier in the forum about how do you manage the weaknesses in online work? Is it similar to the weaknesses in online learning? And how do you compensate?
Yeah, I wanted to just weigh in on this, and I'm certainly happy to hear what Robert has to say, who posed the question. But I think that what I've been teaching the client I mentioned in the Bronx, where they were not working remote and then they went to 100% remote, is that, and I see those weaknesses as lack of sort of more of the free form social connection, accountability, and teamwork. So those are three big things or weaknesses that I'm seeing with the client that I'm working with. And so we've set some really clear parameters around online work. One of them is video is pretty much a requirement unless it really truly is something that you can handle with a quick phone call. But that if you're conducting a real true meeting, it should feel like a true meeting, and that requires video. And that does kind of keep at bay some of the multitasking and some of the split attention that happens with online work. You have to rethink your performance measures. And we've had a lot of occasions where people are going, well, I'm in meetings all the time because my boss is checking up on me, or calling meetings to try and check in on those, those insecurities or uncertainties. But are you really working? We used to, I think, have this mindset that if your butt was in a seat, you're working, which isn't necessarily the case. So rethinking some performance metrics around what are the outputs that you want from your people. And I think a little bit of an attitude right now of forgiveness around some of that, but it really does require on a case-by-case basis, rethinking the performance measures of your team. Agile has been doing this for a very long time in terms of every 2 weeks, you have these very quick sprints that create demonstrations. And I think that's the kind of thinking that needs to go on with remote work. And then I just think more frequent one-on-ones to check in and find out if people are successfully making that transition with all the distractions they have in homeschooling children and all of that. It's going to take some time.
Right. I'd add that there are a lot of productivity tools and practices out there. One thing that we've seen implemented a lot of places is time boxing practices. So we accept and acknowledge and calibrate around the time that people are spending and what they can do at home with children or other family members that they're caring for. So how do you support time boxing or train on that? Or how do you, there are a lot of other productivity tools and solutions, but as business leaders, I would encourage you to identify some that might work for your business. Because there are a lot of operating practices and norms out there that can just make a huge difference in terms of the cadence in which you operate. Even things as simple as on your Slack once a day, everyone is sharing, not as like a write-up or something, but everyone is just sharing, hey, this is what I accomplished today that I feel good about, in order to encourage some kind of supporting one another that we are actually working and getting things done in this time.
Excellent, excellent questions. Any other follow-up questions as we're wrapping up? We are now approaching 11:29.
Yep.
So any other additional questions?
So just one thing, I just wanted to reach out to, or ask Abhishek about how, I mean, I heard that India is really encouraging companies to really give back during the pandemic. And there's some of that going on in the United States in a lot of areas, but how can we encourage companies to find ways, creative ways to give back to not only their clients, but communities as a whole?
Yeah, I think it's a global trend. So in India, there is actually a CSR mandate, which mandates companies to spend 2% of their profits on CSR. So that is driving a lot of this. But we have seen this across our clients in Europe, in the US, on a lot of giving back. I think the difference is that, the larger companies have, big budgets to give back, whereas the, mid to the smaller size companies obviously, have a cash issue, but, they have the employee time or to give back. And that's why we have seen a big trend on virtual volunteering, wherein, employees may not have the money, or the company may not have the money to give back, but there is the intent and the urge. And that's where, employees, especially when they're at home, they would have some more. That's how on giving back happening, and especially amongst the younger employees, amongst the millennials, they read about all the negative news across, and this is one way to feel better about yourself. And if the company can enable you to do it, then they feel much stronger, strongly connected with the company as well. So that's what we have seen across. And I think it's just not at this time when there is a health crisis. And post this, there would be a big, we need to rebuild our cities, our parks, our communities, and so this would continue, not just for now, but also over the medium to longer term as well.
Okay.
Abhishek, I know we're at past time, but somebody had asked whether teenagers are eligible, and
Yeah,
whether
absolutely.
you use graphic search parameters for your
Yeah,
search.
absolutely. So there is also kid-friendly volunteering opportunity. So it's based on your profile and your persona, and based on that there are a variety of volunteering opportunities, including teenagers, a lot of college students, university grads who are who have the time now. And this is also great on the LinkedIn profile. If you could make a use of this time to actually bring, so definitely for teenagers and also kids as well.
Fantastic.
It was a great question also on the Q&A that Abhishek that you had answered regarding, can we run a donation campaign with Goodera as well? And you had replied, so this is for the benefit of everyone who's on the call, that yes. So could you go into just a brief moment about how anyone who's on the call can create a donation campaign?
Yeah, so on the Goodera platform, what we did is curated a set of nonprofits who work for specifically COVID relief, and you could donate to these nonprofits. We have also got HNIs and other institutions who might match a part of that. So it's based on nonprofit and the city that you are in. But on Goodera you could run this, and employees can browse donation opportunities and donate through their credit card or payroll, and the companies may also choose to match it. And we ensure there is transparency on what happens with the money, so that employees have the confidence that it's going to the right cause and can understand the impact of their dollars.
Great. All right. Thank you so much.
I had seen one question about, I'm kind of lost it now, but something about safety and how do you kind of ensure a safe environment when you've got hundreds or thousands of employees working in an operation. And I just want to call out that one, there are specific state, within each state, there are states that are putting things in place to say, yes, you should and can do this when we lift the stay-at-home order. On the Eastern Seaboard, New Jersey, Maryland, Connecticut, as Rhode Island, and then in California as well, they're defining some of the acts and things that you should do. And everything that I'm reading, and Amy, I'd be curious what tactics you think are okay as an employment attorney, but everything I'm reading is saying, listen, at a minimum, take temperatures when people come to work and use that as a baseline criteria, and that's okay. And I think that employers need to be thinking about different options, not just wearing a face mask.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some more FAQs and some more guidance from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission regarding the interplay between the Americans with Disabilities Act and privacy laws and sort of COVID-19. I think they're sort of holding firm right now that, yes, you can do temperature checks and yes, you can ask employees questions about their health and whether they've been exposed to something that would make them more likely to be susceptible to the virus. But I think you should, and this is not sort of for my benefit, but I do think that HR consultants and companies should be contacting their legal attorneys and their consultants before making any decisions. A lot of what we see is that the companies, the clients, HR, the CEO really means well. They want to be protective, but it can sometimes backfire and come off as being very paternalistic or sort of overly intrusive. And you always have to make sure, as Lyssa and everybody on the call knows, that you're not picking and choosing. If you're going to take temperatures, it's everybody. It's not just the older workers. It's not just, African Americans or whoever. It's got to be uniform. It's got to be consistent. You've got to keep in mind the optics of what you're doing as well as the legality of it.
Yeah, you're speaking to my heart. Thank you so much, Amy. That is absolutely relevant right now. We need to be cautious with our boundaries, for sure.
There's a question that was posted earlier in the forum from Steve that I thought would be great for discussion. How does the conversation with any personnel change relative to current reduction in force versus more traditional reduction in force initiatives? So I know some of the conversations that I've had or that I've coached leaders to have around this is, we've talked quite a bit in the forums that we've had around the difference between a layoff and a furlough, and that a furlough is whether it's complete full-time furlough that you're off of work or that your hours are reduced, that the expectation is that you'll come back to work at some time. And so most of those furloughs then have job attached status, and that is a message to the employee that if all goes well and we're able to bring our employees back, the intent is to bring you back. So it's a little bit different than a traditional layoff, which is, maybe due to something that's going on in the environment that is causing you to reduce your workforce based on a lack of work. This is a lack of work, but it's perceived to be temporary, and whether temporary is 1 month, 3 months, or a year, it's still perceived to be temporary. And a lot of what we've been discussing with our panelists is how leaders can be proactive about ensuring that we do sustain our businesses, and that even though work may look different in the future, that the intent is to rejuvenate our workforce and bring them back.
Yeah.
So Steve, if you're still on, if you wanted to jump in, if that answers your question, or if you had any other thoughts on that.
I saw
Sam,
Steve.
it looks like you had something.
Yeah, I saw Steve drop off, but I wanted to add.
He did.
Yeah, he did. But I want to add something. Is right now the one big difference between this situation and past type of rifts and so forth is the need for transparency. A lot of individuals are hypersensitive to what's going on. I mean, as we talked earlier in presentations, that their placement on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is very, very low right now. They're thinking about their safety, family safety, food, and so forth. And so now more than ever is the time to be transparent and open with your employees about your business. To the extent that you're not, it will damage your ability to rehire or recruit new talent after the pandemic. So transparency is very, very important right now.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And, to the point of even caring about personal circumstances like homeschooling and managing, elderly and things in your life. We also have to consider that we have to reach out more with a compassion, dignity, and respect attitude around personal circumstances. So the traditional mindset about employer-employee relationship, in my view, has shifted as well.
We're seeing a lot of employers, just to add on to what Sam was saying about the messaging right now, we're seeing a lot of employers be really proactive about marketing the event. It's the wrong word, but communicating about it publicly. So not just doing a layoff, but actually doing a press release and sharing on their website or their LinkedIn profile, and even providing a PowerPoint deck of here's a profile of all of the great talent on our team that we had to let go because of our business economic changes, and encouraging them to go to websites or getting outplacement services that maybe smaller employers would have not done in the past, are now jumping in and providing. So I am seeing a lot more traction on the communication publicly with reductions in force outside of not, just to employees.
Yeah, and I will echo that. There are sectors in the community and in industry that are hiring and that have a need, whether it's in security or whether it's in other technology aspects. And we're seeing a lot on LinkedIn. There are places to post that you have jobs available that are new on the Colorado unemployment website. There's a whole new section and area where you can post employment opportunities and where laid off employees can go and look at what's available. In the tech center here in Boulder, the tech community has put out communications and emails about staff that they've laid off or businesses and sectors that are hiring. So there is a lot of sort of, we're all in this together, and wherever we can find the silver lining of hope or ability for employment or partial employment, I think people are sort of bucking the trend of what they're seeing, in the news, and doing what they can to sort of support either the local or the broader community. The only other thing I would say to again be that counterbalance, I hate to be negative in terms of the communications with employees, is this will end at some point. And if somebody is laid off, and if they are sort of wanting to look at it in a more negative light, you still have to be careful about those communications and reaching out to employees. I always err a little bit on the side of caution in terms of, if your employees come to you with personal information, with stories about struggle, with stories about elder care or their challenges, yes, react to that, be kind and be welcoming. But again, I urge people to be, to a little bit of caution in terms of how proactive you are in getting involved in your employees' lives. I think it comes from, as Char said, it comes from a good place. It comes from the heart. People are different. I mean, I think the people on this call and the HR professionals in general are kind, caring, generous of spirit and of heart. But I do think that, every employee is different, and every employee is dealing with their stress differently. And they may look at sort of an inquiry about their personal circumstances as being, you know, overly intrusive. So I would take your cues from your employees rather than projecting your own needs or your own value system onto the employees.
I absolutely 100% agree. There's a fine balance with that, for sure. And also, you know, from a wage and hour perspective, you know, how is it we're continuing to pay our employees, and, you know, how are we tracking their time? I mean, there's a lot of those aspects we have to think about as well. So we are now at 11:44. And I think we've ran over. It's time for us to wrap up. So I will say that thank you so much for everyone. And I see we still have participants that are on and dropping off here. So thank you so much. This is the conclusion of our HR forum on COVID-19, but that doesn't mean that we're not continuing this. We are going to transition to more people strategy forums moving forward. So Sam and I and team and others that are going to be involved will be continuing to invite you participants moving forward. In the following weeks, it'll be every Wednesday at 10 a.m. And we'd love to have your participation, involvement. We will be looking for other speakers relative to different topics related to people strategy during the COVID-19. And so if any one of you wants to email myself, Sam, Debbie, any of us, please let us know if you've got further speakers, and we'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much. And all this will be on the CompTeam.net, recordings and information. So thank you, and enjoy your day and be well. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, bye-bye.